Hi, I'm Madison and welcome back to my channel. Today I have my April wrap-up. So welcome to my April wrap-up. April was an okay reading month for me. Could have been better. Could have been worse. Could have been worse. Still read a solid amount of books, but it could have been worse. Anyway, I read 11 books in the month of April. 5 of them were ebooks and 6 of them were physical books. I read 3 YA books, 2 new adult books, and 6 adult books. Genre-wise, I read 1 fantasy book, 2 dystopians, 2 Omegaverses, and 6 romances. And lastly, for my page counter this month, I read 3,139 pages. Yeah. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to start with my lowest rated book and work up to my highest rated book of this month. We have some low ones and we got some high ones. We got a good mix this time around. So without further ado, let's move into it. So let's grab one of my lowest rated books of this month. I got 2 2-star reads. This is Uglies by Scott Westerfeld. I did a vlog where I read 3 like classic YA books and this was one of them. I wanted to see if this held up to the test of time. And it was okay. It was okay. It was just horribly boring. This was so boring. And there's like no romance in it until like 2/3 of the way through, and then like she meets a guy 2/3 of the way through and it's like, I love him and I give everything for him. I'm like, bruh, you met this guy like yesterday. Okay, whatever. But that's like literally what happens, and like it was fun. Like this is being turned into a movie. I think this will make a good movie, because there's so much that can be built upon positiveness, you know. But otherwise, I don't think I wouldn't recommend reading this before the movies. I think you would be equally satisfied just watching the movies when that eventually does come out, if it does end up fully going into production. They have a whole cast for it. I just don't know if it'll actually get made. But I recommend just doing that. If you don't know what this is about, set in a world where there are uglies and there are pretties and there's like other people as well, like specials and extras and things like that. But uglies are regular people and pretties are people who have been surgically transformed into basically perfect looking clones. This all happens when you turn 18, and there's this girl, she is really excited to turn pretty when she turns 18 because her best friend, he just was pretty, now he's like in the pretty camp and she's still in the ugly area. Until she meets this other girl who decides that she doesn't want to turn pretty and wants to stay ugly, and she decides to run away, and then this girl ends up having to track her down, otherwise she won't be allowed to turn pretty, and so it's her finding like the rebel camps of like the anti-pretty people. My issue with this book is the fact that like we're using the terms like ugly and pretty and like all the ugly people that are like, it's a thing and it annoys me, and there are other things that like annoy me, but it's, you can watch my vlog if you want more on this, okay? End of story. We then have Merciless Kings by Becca Steele. This is a reverse harem. I've been really like into my reverse harems lately, and this was one that I read this month. I gave it a 2 out of 5, which I think was maybe a little bit generous. I actually think I've blacked out a lot of this book. I've really blacked it out because it's about this girl. She ends up starting over at a new school, meets the 3 guys who are like known as like the kings, like they're like the bad boys, and they end up deciding that they want to ruin her because her uncle that she lives with is a horrible person, and her uncle has done these bad things, and they think that she's also like part of his like whole scheme of bad things that he's done. They plan to punish her for that, and that's what it is. And it's a lot of like bullying, and it's all set in high school. And I've come to the conclusion that I'm no longer reading reverse harems set in high school because they never end well for me, because things just go a little too far for me to like suspend my disbelief for high schoolers. There's also a lot of like dubcon in this book, and a lot more dubcon than I would like in a book. Sometimes dubcon is, it's done in a way that like you can be fine with it, but then there are ways that dubcon is done and you kind of are like, oh, I don't really know how I feel about that. And that's what this book was like. And it was also just really weird. It was just a weird book, and everything was just over, like it just didn't work. It was a miss. It was a miss for me. So if you're looking for a reverse harem series, this is not the first one I would go with if I was you. Am I intrigued to see where this series keeps on going? Yes. Did I start the second book in this series? Yes. Did I immediately put it down because it just got worse? Also, yes, I actually DNF'd it. I don't plan on going back to this series. I'm done with it. So I don't recommend it. But I mean, if you're super into like high school dubcon, maybe it could work for you. God, that sounds awful. There was definitely like other things that were like super problematic about this book, but I can't remember now. And I definitely know that I blacked out a lot of this book. So don't recommend it. We're moving on. Now we have my 3 out of 5 star reads. The first one is going to be Lumberjack. This is only like 108 pages. I read it as a palate cleanser during my early 2000s vlog because I just needed a break from everything that I was reading with that. This is basically about a girl who decides that she's just gotten like a divorce or broken up with, and she decides she needs like a break, so she decides to go off the radar and go to this like cabin in like Bumble freaking hell, who knows where. And she gets there and she's like having her time until she gets lost while she goes for like a walk one day, stumbles across a cabin where one of this lumberjack dude lives. She ends up having to stay the night because a storm comes in and she can't leave, and sexy things happen with her and this lumberjack man. And that's basically it. It's a 100-page erotica novel about a lumberjack and a regular chick from the city getting it on. So, you know, if you like to like have like erotica novels sprinkled throughout, you know, as palate cleansers, this was fine. I've definitely read better erotica novellas before. This is not like my favorite short novella that's like erotica, but it's like okay. And like, it was fine. My next 3 out of 5 stars also from, this is just like, I feel like I'm sounding very boring at the moment because all of these books were kind of a bit blasé. But we then had The Summer I Turned Pretty, which the trailer just came out the other day for like the full-on trailer, I think, for the limited series. You know, I'm actually curious if the limited series, like if the first set of episodes is just book 1, because if it is, I don't really know, because not much happens for that to be an entire 8 episode series. Like, how do you get 8 episodes out of 270 pages? Beats me. So maybe it's like all 3 books in one, in which case that would make way more sense. But like all 3 books in 8 episodes, that seems a bit quick. Like this seems like it could be like 4, 5. I don't know. What am I talking about? I'm not a director. I don't know jack shit. Okay, anyway. This was okay. I think that if you want to read this before the limited series comes out, you can. But once again, this is not necessary. I am glad that I kind of did read it just because no one has mentioned that there's a huge trigger warning in this series for cancer and death of a loved one. So if that is a trigger for you, surprise, because no one is mentioning it anywhere. I've really not seen anyone talk about that, which like shook. I'm shook. Anyway, it's about a girl. She's been best friends with like these 2 boys since she was a kid because her mum and their mum are like biffles since they were like kids, and so they always stay at like each other's beach house every summer, which is like the boys and their mum live the beach year round, and then her and her mum come down every summer for like the whole summer to hang out. And she's always been in love with the elder brother and is best friends with the younger brother. And obviously this summer is when like she just doesn't turn pretty, but like it's when they start noticing her as like more than that. And yeah, her romance isn't with either of the boys. It's with a third party, which I think is what frustrated me the most. But I mean, it was fine. My issue with this is that each chapter, like every like 2 or 3 chapters, it flashes back in time to when she was a kid, and you see her aging up throughout each of the summers that she spent there since she was like a child, and her friendship progressing and romance progressing, like her crush progressing throughout the years since he was like a kid. And I hated that. I hated the flashbacks. I abhorred the flashbacks. The flashbacks sucked because they ruined the pacing of the story. I'm just gonna say it. I would have preferred if all the flashbacks occurred at the beginning and you saw like snippets of chapters of her throughout the years, and then it just took place of like what was happening now, rather than me reading 3 chapters and then going back in time, 3 chapters back in time, 3 chapters back. The pacing was so, it just kept taking me out of the story, and I hated it. I hated the flashbacks. It's very finicky, and I know this book came out like many years ago, and like, you know, yes, it's been turned to a movie now, but it's like there was like a lot done to fix that stuff. Yeah, 2010. So like, it's fine. It's just like, this is a very easy book. Like you can read this in like 2 hours, not like without a doubt. So basically the verdict is that this is a fun summer read, but I hated the flashbacks. Bam. Okay, let's keep going and not stick on that. Let's talk about Beauty and the Baller by Ilsa Madden-Mills. This is a 3.5 out of 5 star book. This book should have been better. It should have been more than a 3.5, but for some reason it just there was something, and I still to this point cannot figure out what it was that wasn't working for me. And I just don't know what it is, because there was so much about this book that I should have loved. So this follows Ronan and Nova. Ronan is an NHL, like the biggest dude in the NHL when this book starts in the prologue. And Nova is a pageant queen, and she also works at like a sports bar on the side. And one day she rocks up to one of his events dressed as Princess Leia when she was, you know, with Jabba the Hutt, so like in her, like, you know, that sexy outfit, the one that I love. I would love to wear. If someone made that cosplay for me and was like, wear this, I would be like, yes, in a heartbeat. That is one of the sexiest cosplays you can wear in the entire world. Digressing. Anyway, they have one night together, but it ends horribly because he ends up calling out his dead wife's name and she's mortified. And then like many years pass, and she ends up coming back to her hometown to look after her younger sister when her mum passes away. I think that's what it is. What ends up happening is she ends up learning that her next door neighbor is actually this dude. It's Ronan, and he's actually currently the head football coach for their high school. And so she's actually stuck seeing him all the time, and he actually doesn't remember who she is. He doesn't remember who she is because he was like in an alcoholic stupor after his wife passed away, and blames himself for everything that happened that night. And so he doesn't remember who she is, but she's like, I remember who he is, and now I'm even more pissed that he doesn't even know who I am anymore. And they end up actually, when he realizes who she is, they end up into a fake dating relationship because her ex is currently at the high school that she's now teaching at, and she wants to like, they fake date to get him off her back, and she fakes date him to get one of his admirers off his back. So it's a fake dating relationship as well. You know, now that I think about it, I think there was just a lot going on in this book. And I think that might have been the reason why, is because there's so much happening in this. And that's probably the big reason why I was kind of like, wow, there's just a lot to take in here. And I feel like this could have been like a much longer book for that reason. The sexy scenes were really good, and I was laughing out loud a bunch during this. Like, there were some really funny scenes, because obviously like they are attracted to one another, and they know that they're attracted to one another because they had a one night stand, but they're also like, oh, we shouldn't cross this line again. And she's like, I don't want to cross this line again because you ruined my heart the first time around. But also she can't help but be like, I'm still like hella freaking attracted to him. And he's also obsessed with Star Wars, so if you like Star Wars, definitely read this, because I think you would have so much fun with just all the Star Wars jargon and Star Wars like trivia and Easter eggs that are put in this book. It was like a really enjoyable book. It just, yeah, it missed. There's not much else I can say, you know? Then we're moving on to the 4-star reads. Now it's kind of funny because the more I think about this, I'm like, this is probably like a 3.75 star book. But when I read this book, it was a 4 because everything else I'd read before it was god freaking awful. That's Delirium. When I sit here now, I'm gonna change this to like a 3.75 because like it's really not a 4-star book. But you know, when you compare it to Uglies and The Summer I Turned Pretty, it's a 4-star book. It was much better than both of those because this was really fun. This was a fun book. There were a couple of things in it that were annoying, but this came out in, good God, when did this come out? 2011. So you gotta think, this came back out in 2011, the year before the world was supposed to end. Does anyone remember that? 2012 was supposed to be when the world ended. And you know what? It was fun. It was fun. It's about a world where love is considered like a disease, and so when you turn 18, you get cured of the love sickness, and you end up getting matched with a boy or whoever it is that ends up being like you know, after you do like some state testing, you get matched with someone, that's who you marry. And so you're following Lena, and she is, you know, very excited to be cured and all that stuff, especially since her mum, the cure never worked on her, and her mum went crazy because of love and ended up committing suicide. So Lena has always like been like, yeah, I want the cure, like I want it to work in X, Y, and Z. Until like during the day of her testing, when she's supposed to be tested for everything, the rebels end up like attacking basically and like throwing this whole like spanner in the works, and she ends up meeting this boy that she ends up falling in love with, which is forbidden, and ends up learning that he's like a rebel leader, and they're forbidden romance, and her being like, do I still want to be cured? Do I not want to be cured? Like, what even is life anymore? Do we even trust that the cure is something that we actually need? What does it mean? Like, not trusting this dystopian society anymore. Like, it's definitely like a very classic dystopian, and I really liked how much it stayed to like the classic dystopian vibes that I really do love about the dystopian genre. But I enjoyed it. It was a fun read. It was very quick. You know, the romance is way more prominent in this. I thought it was fun. So if you're gonna pick up any like really old book that stands up to the test of time, this one did stand up to the test of time, so ta-da. Okay, so my next other 4 out of 5 star books, we also have A Touch of Darkness by Scarlett St. Clair. This is a Hades and Persephone retelling. It is set in the modern world, but the gods still do have like magical powers and like all the magical stuff still exists, you know, like the underworld and Olympus and stuff like that. So it's like a really like unique, it's almost like urban fantasy. I guess actually urban fantasy would be a bit more how I would classify this. I had so much fun reading this. I think I probably would have rated this higher had it not have been for the fact that I had read this over the time span of 2 weeks. Like I read some of it, put it down, read some of it, and then put it down because I was traveling and doing other things and a lot of stuff were going on in my life. It's like a 4.5. If I'm like, you know, if I wanted to round, it's probably like a 4.5. And, you know, it was just so much fun because, you know, you have Persephone. She doesn't actually have magic. She's like supposed to, she's a goddess, but she's a secret goddess. She like uses glamour so that people don't know that she is a goddess, because the gods and goddesses in this world, you can tell that they are what they are because they have like horns that come out of their heads, which is like weird but cool. I've seen some fan art for it and it makes way more sense when you see the fan art for it versus it being described, because I was like, wait, what? But yeah, she doesn't have magic, and she ends up accidentally getting into a bargain with Hades, and she's also a journalist, and she decides to write an expose article on him, and you know, they end up falling in love and it's their romance. And so I really enjoyed this. I thought it was really fun. You know, I just really loved Hades. Who doesn't love Hades? And I love Greek myth. Greek myth is like my favorite thing in the entire world, and the way that Scarlett St. Clair like did her Greek myth in this book was really fun. Always find it so interesting to see like different renditions of Greek mythology, and this is definitely like a really, really, really fun one. And I love the magic in this because magic is present, and it was such like a fun, like it's not like too heavy on the fantasy because you understand it. It's not like it's anything like brand new that like is a confusing magic system to understand because it's the Greek gods. I would definitely recommend this. Like, you know, if this is something you've been putting off, do pick it up because it was such a blast and a half. I'm so excited to continue on the series. I'm actually going to be reading A Game of Fate next, which is Hades's book. So this book is in Persephone's POV. Then you read A Game of Fate, which is from Hades's POV, and then you just keep like interchanging one and the other until you get to like the last book of this series, which is coming out next year. But I am so excited because Hades, oh my god, the things that he was saying, like his lines, he is such an awesome character. Like he is so freaking cool. I read this because I was super stressed, and this like was such an easy book to read when I was super stressed. So if you are ever like in like a slump or something, I feel like this is a really good book to also get you out of a reading slump, just because the writing style is very like easy and flowing to understand, and the world is just like kind of sucks you right into it. So yeah. Okay, the next book I'm going to be talking to you guys about is Teach Me by Olivia Dade. This is about these 2 teachers. What are their names? Haha, let me find that out. Okay, so in this book we have Rose and Martin. Now, Rose has been a history teacher for many, many years at this school. She, you know, has everything set. She has her way of life. She had a husband who ended up being, you know, a dick, and she divorced him, but she's still actually best friends with her husband's mother and father. So she's like best friends with her like in-laws still, which is really cute. Until one day a brand new teacher starts the school, Martin, and he ends up being given her classes to take over instead. So she gets, you know, the classes that she's been building for all these years get taken away from her, and she is pissed. She knows it's not Martin's fault. She knows it's this other guy's fault, like the head supervisor who hates her. He's the reason why all this stuff happened. And so she's a bit pissed that like this guy is coming in as a brand new teacher and is basically taking away her students from her that she's been like cultivating, because she really cares about her students. And Martin is a single dad. His wife left him and he moved to this town because his daughter and ex-wife were living here, and so he wanted to be near his daughter still, so he ended up transferring to the school. And he's very wary of love because he was, to an extent, in a bit of an emotionally, verbally abusive relationship with his marriage, because his wife was just consistently like putting him down and putting shit on him. And so he's afraid to love again. She's afraid to love again, but they have this like instant connection. She definitely sees him as like her enemy at the start, but then is like, how do I keep seeing him as my enemy when he's like this genuinely like nice human being? And he's like instantly attracted to her, but like also like doesn't like want to like impose on her, but he can tell that she's like kind of uncomfortable about like PDA and stuff like that. And so it's them falling in love, kind of like learning to fall in love again after they've both been burnt in the past. And it was so sweet, and it was so realistic, and it was just like, I have never read a more realistic portrayal of like a healthy romantic relationship, because like anytime a miscommunication might pop up, they actually like approach the other person to talk it out. And I sat there as I was reading this and I was like, wow, oh my God. The number of times like any other book I've read would have gone right into miscommunication. This couple was like, nah, let's talk about it. And like, let's be open with our feelings. Like, let's be like flat out, like, this is what I'm struggling with. And like, this is the reason why, like, I'm having trouble opening up to you. Like, and my mind was like blown. My mind was blown. It was, oh my God. I was like, wow. It is also totally Grumpy Sunshine. Like, she is such a grump and he is like such like a sunshiny character. He like just wants to be friends with her. He's like a little puppy dog. And she's like, now she's like a cat, you know. She's like, I don't want to like do it now. Like, she's so guarded, but she's so cool, and it was just so enjoyable. And like, I was just like, I finished this book and I just sat there and I was like, I feel like my life is just better having read this, because like I just feel like it's like the golden standard of like relationships is in this book, like hands down. I was like, damn, I really like this. So yeah, I don't really have a bad thing to say about it. It just wasn't like a 5-star. It was just like, yeah. Okay, let's move into my 5-star reads. We're gonna start with one that I'm so excited about, and that is Omega's Obsession by Sarah Blue. This is an Omegaverse. It is book 2 in the Heat Haven series. I do recommend that you read Heat Haven beforehand. It's like less than 100 pages of novella, and it just introduces you to this Omegaverse world and how this Omegaverse does work and what Heat Haven is. Plus, there's a really fun Easter egg to Heat Haven in this book that you would totally miss if you have not read Heat Haven, and it literally made me laugh out loud so much. So, this is Omega's Obsession. So you have Liv, she's an Omega, she comes from a very wealthy Omega family, and her dad, who's an Alpha, obviously, like, he thinks that she's, like, he hates Liv. He thinks that Liv's only purpose in world is being an Omega and using her to then, like, arrange a marriage with, like, another wealthy Alpha family that can, like, still keep boosting their family up in society. And she doesn't want that. She's, ever since she was, like, a little girl, has been obsessed with her older brother's best friend Dean, who is an Alpha, and they kind of like had a romance going when they were like kids. You know, there's like a 3-year age gap between them. I think she was 16, he was 18 when she ended up like perfuming into an Omega, and like he stayed away from her ever since then. But she's like obsessed with Dean. Like, she's obsessed with him and like steals his stuff. She's, yeah, like that's the part of the obsession part, is she steals shit from the people that she likes. It's fine. Like, it sounds weird when I say it, like, you know, in regular context, but in the context of the book, it's cool that she steals their stuff. Like, it's an endearing personality trait, okay? But she's obsessed with Dean and wants to be with him. And then when the book starts off, she ends up finding out that Dean and his 2 new pack mates that he's like made, River and Grayson, the 3 of them are going to Heat Haven because they want to start a pack and they want to find an Omega. And she is distraught. She's like, what the actual F? Like, I'm right here. We have this undeniable chemistry. Why wouldn't you acknowledge me and take me on as your Omega? And then she ends up bumping into one of his pack mates, River, and they instantly have this connection as well. And River is a beta, and he's like covered in tattoos. He's like the bad boy. He's also a little bit of like an obsessed stalker at times. He does stalk her in the beginning a little bit too, but you know, the endearing kind of stalking that comes from an Omegaverse book. And he also has primal play. Him and her do primal play, which is really fun. And so then it ends up kind of being her kind of like trying to become like the Omega for this pack, and like, you know, the other 2 members wanting her, Dean being like, we can't be together and I can't tell you why we can't be together, and her trying to figure out like why they can't be together and who's keeping them apart and like what all these different secrets are and stuff like that. Like, the ending is like, whew, there's a lot of shit that goes down. Oh, I forgot that I have an art print in here. I have an art print of like our beautiful pack. That's Liv, that's River, that's Dean, and that's Grayson. The second I saw him, I was like, yes, look at this tattooed man. So yeah, I really enjoyed this. It was super, super fun. It's definitely like hella kinky. Oh, the only thing I didn't like about it is that her and Grayson have like a daddy kink, so she calls Grayson daddy a lot. Like, it's actually much heavier daddy kink than I prefer. I don't like daddy kink at all. It's not my thing. I don't mind it if it comes up like once or twice in a book, but like all of their like sexy things together was daddy kink, and it was just a bit much for me. But that's just my own personal preference, so just if that's a hard no for anyone, please do know that. But oh my god, the sexual tension in this book, delicious. The sex in this book, delicious. Her and Dean, when they finally get together after the sexual tension has been brewing in the book, I was like, ah, yes. Oh my god. It was just really fun. It was really fun and really good, so I definitely recommend. I also have another Omegaverse book, and that is Pack Origin. This is a prequel novella to a series that just started. So the first book just came out, I think, a couple weeks ago. So I do plan to read this series, but this is the prequel novella and I loved it. So in this one, they are all in like the foster care system. So there's, I think it's 4 alphas, and then there's the girl, and she's a beta. And they are all like attracted to her, and they all want to be with her, like these 4 alpha guys, and they all want to have a pack. And there's a secret that they all had that you don't really know what's going on with them and like what they're doing. They are doing like some gang criminal activities on the side as like a side hustle. But there's the 4 or 5 guys who are all alphas who are like together, and they want to start a pack, and they want her to be in their pack. They all view her as an omega, even though she's a beta. And what ends up happening is she ends up perfuming and becoming an omega, and they're like, we can't protect you yet. And so that's what it's about. It's the origins of how their pack will come to be. So it was really good. Definitely recommend it. And then last but not least, we had The Marriage Effect by Karla Sorensen. This is book 3 in the Washington Wolves trilogy. This is a sports romance series about the Washington Wolves football team. Logan Ward, he's a defensive team captain. You've seen him throughout the last 3 books. Paige is the best friend to the main girl in book 1, and so this is their marriage of convenience story. Paige is an ex-supermodel, and she ends up finding out that her aunt has passed away and has left her $3 million, but in order to inherit that $3 million, she has to get married for it. And then you have Logan, and he's the one guy on the football team who has always wanted to be out of the limelight. You know, he doesn't want to be in any of the publicity stunts. He doesn't want to talk to anyone. He comes off extremely grumpy, and it's because he actually has 4 younger sisters that he is the guardian of when his parents passed away. And so he's been looking after them until one of his sisters ends up getting into an accident. His older brother ends up threatening to take custody of the 4 younger sisters. And the only way that he can like kind of convince the court that like he's still allowed to look after his younger sisters despite him having this football career that makes him like always out of the house is by marrying someone. And so him and Paige enter a marriage of convenience in order for them to both like kind of get what they want, and obviously them falling in love. He's a complete grump. She's a total sunshine. She's so awesome. She's like tempting him. He's like, we have to be together for at least 2 years for this to work. And she's like, yeah, sure. She's like, we can get a little bit hot and heavy during that time. And he's like, no touching, no nothing. This is just in name only. And she's like, are you telling me you want us to both stay celibate for 2 years, even though we're both 2 attractive human beings who are attracted to one another? And he goes, I'm not commenting on that. And she's like, okay, we'll see about that. And she like starts like trying to like tempt him and stuff. And obviously like, you know, she's now like the mother, like when she marries him, to like these 4 younger girls, and her kind of like learning what that means. And like, it was so much fun. This book 1 and 3 in this series are my favorites. Book 2 was like a bit of a mess for me, but I highly recommend this series. The next series is a spin-off following those 4 younger sisters, and I'm so stoked for that. Like after seeing them all in this book, I can't wait to see like how they all are grown up. But this was such a blast. Like highly recommend if you like sport romances. Those are all the books that I read this month. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please slap button down below. If you want to see more of me, please go to my channel. And until next time, thanks a bunch everyone. Bye-bye.